The other side, you see how that's spreading out and this one is kind of folding in. Don't worry if they fold in, that's totally normal. I like to sew them on the right side so I can see what it's gonna look like when I'm finished. And so again, I'm gonna just do a 1/4 of an inch top stitch, and this time I'm gonna back stitch. And if you want to practice doing a double top stitch, you can also top stitch again at 1/8 of an inch. And again, you'd bring this back over and press it so it lays really nice and flat. Same thing on this one. Paying attention as you go to make sure that nothing is flipping out on the other side. If that happens, it's no big deal. You can always go over it or unpick your seam. And so you can double check and make sure everything looks good on the other side. My tension is really off on this machine right now, so these look terrible, but I'm not gonna mess with it while doing the demo. So that's that. And like I said, if you wanna practice doing another top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, just how to kind of stitch on the very edge of something, you're welcome to do a double top stitch on this, but at least have one. So that is the turned and stitched curve sample. And the last one is to actually set in a curve into the other, one curve into another. So again, just like I was showing you on the princess seam, this is supposed to fit into here. Now you'll notice that it's bigger because of seam allowance. This dotted line should fit perfectly onto that dotted line. So what we're going to do though is, again, I can't sew it like this. I have to sew them, I have to pin them right sides to right sides. Make sure that you've notched your center here. I'm gonna just make a little line because I'm gonna end up clipping in. And so I wanna make sure that I can see that center one. Once I start clipping, they all start to look the same. For this, I'm gonna stay stitch again. So this is gonna make it easier once you start clipping to not lose control, and to also mark where your seam allowance is going to be. And this one you're going to clip before you actually sew it together, so it is really important to do your stay stitching. So stay stitching on both. And you can see, like, I'm not really moving my hands. I'm just kind of letting the machine pull this through and guiding it as it goes through, gently and without force. Okay, so now that I have my stay stitching, I'm going to clip in to that stay stitching, again, to and not through, all the way around my curves. This one is probably more important than the other one, but you can clip both of them. What's going to happen is I'm going to need to make this curve go around that curve, and so the only way to let that do that, you see how now, because of those clips, I can now turn that? That's essentially what I want to do. So again, right sides together, and I've marked on the other side, so I'm going to do right sides together. Make sure I mark I center up my, I pin up my center, and then I'm going to pin out from there. So I'm going to pin to the end here. And what's going to happen is it's going to seem like there's no way that this is going to fit in. But once you kind of pull it out and start to ease that in, go to the middle and pin in the middle, and then try and move out all of that excess that isn't sort of fitting. And I promise you, they will fit. It will seem like it's not going to, but just keep, finagling with it. Again, you're in control of these materials. You may want to say it won't go or it doesn't want to, but you're in control. You tell it what to do. And so pinning is really important for this one. I wouldn't be able to do this without pinning it, at least not accurately. And again, go to the end and pin that first, and make sure that the ends that are that they're meeting up the way the seams would meet up. And again, I'm going to pull and sort of find that middle. And this is called easing in. We'll be doing this with sleeves a little bit, you want to try and find that middle. Whenever there's something that is a bigger or seems like a surface that won't fit into another surface, up to a certain point you really can make it fit into another spot. You just have to work it, kind of stretch it out, use your clipping. And so now that I'm ready to sew, I'm going to sew on the side that has all the extra, because this extra has a tendency to get folded over and stitched down, and if it's on the top, I can see it. If it's on the bottom, I don't have as much control. I can feel it with my fingers, but it's a much easier thing to do if you can see right on the top what's going on. So I'm going to sew at a 1/2 inch back stitch, and I'm going to just go slow and make sure that I'm on the correct side of my stay stitching. So you don't want to see your stay stitching on the outside. Not the end of the world. If you do, you can always remove stay stitching afterwards, but ideally we want to leave it in there for strength. Anywhere where there's a closed circuit of stitching or anything, fabric, it's going to make something stronger, so it's important to sort of let those areas be one continuous line of something rather than a broken line. Okay. And if you want to, again, you can trim away to 1/4 inch all that seam allowance, but basically then you're just going to open it up. You're going to press these open like that, and that is your curve into a curve. That being said, let's just do one more, and this is the same exact concept as this. It's just going to be in use. So this is the Princess Seam Bodice. There's a front with a lapel, which you don't have to worry too much about. It's just the piece that happened to be with the princess line. And again, I'm going to want this piece to get sewn in like this, but I need to do right sides to right side. You could go ahead and do stay stitching on both of those curves. Ignore everything except that curve, and make sure you have your notch. So again, stay stitch on this curve. And stay stitch on this curve. And then again, I want to make sure that I mark where my notch is, because I'm going to end up clipping this. And you don't have to do this, but you'll get confused if you start clipping and you think you're going to remember. Once you clip one more, you'll be like, I don't know. So I'm going to clip around the curves. You don't have to worry on this one about clipping down the straightaways. So once you get to there, you don't have to clip much more than that. But anywhere where there's a curve, you're going to want to clip. And again, I'm going to put my right sides together, matching up my notches first. So I'm going to pin first at my notch, and then I'm going to go to my ends. And again, I'm going to want to stretch and move that so that the edges are even. And then I'm going to, in the middle, kind of pull a little bit until those lines match up and lie on one another. Oops, sorry, throw a pin at you. Same thing, going to pin at the bottom here. And then all of that extra if you're having trouble, clip in a few more times and it will move itself out. This is something that you'll get better with over time. So if your first couple tries come out kind of puckered, don't worry, it's kind of normal. I mean, this is the nature of the beast, and you can adjust this as you're sewing too. I'm going to show you because this one's being a little bit fussy. So again, I'm going to sew on the side that has the excess fabric. So as much as I can figure out, I'm going to sew on this side because it has all this extra. As I'm going, I'm just going to make sure that I don't feel any major puckers, and if I'm nearing an area, so here's a little bit of a fold. If I near an area that looks like it's going to be folded and I don't want to solidify it as a fold, I can put my needle in, lift up my foot, and rearrange some of that fabric so that it is actually fitting in a little bit better. Now, if you're going to take needles out as you go, or pins out as you go, make sure that your seam allowances are even. What can happen on these curved pieces is sometimes you'll lose track of one side and it'll get much bigger, but you really want those raw edges to always stay the same. Now, if you happen to make a pucker, okay, so good. I did actually sew over a little piece here, which I want to fix. This is a pucker. It's going to be a pucker on the outside of my garment, and I really don't want that. That's not an ideal thing for me, right? It's not going to be smooth. So no big deal. Doesn't mean you have to do it over. Just use your seam ripper, and you're going to pop out just the few stitches that are right on where that pucker happened, and one or two in front and 1 and 2 behind, and then you're just going to kind of smooth it out. Use your fingernails, stretch it out a little bit, and then you're going to be able to just kind of pick up where you left off, where that last stitches that you took out, back stitch, and then sew over to where you left off on the end of that. And so now my puckers are much better. And some little puckers are okay. A fold is not. Little puckers like this are okay because this will come out when you press it. So you're going to press these open on this side, and then you're going to turn it over and press this side. And if you want to, this is a good piece to use the ham. You guys remember what the ham is? Okay, so this is a curve, so if you want, use the ham to kind of make this nice and smooth, and what it should look like when it's all pressed is this, and again, pressed nice and open on that side. So I should be able to see your stay stitching. Even if you trim away, which you can also trim this away if you want, leave the stay stitching so I can double check. Same thing with these curved ones. I can see your stay stitching in there, okay? Any questions on curves?